you can introduce yourself to the whole world, but if there's nothing for them to learn more about you, aka like a web presence, content for them to start diving through, if they can't binge, you're effed. You're screwed.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast brought to you by Indepreneur.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. This is episode 294, and we're going to be talking about your music business, Circa's music business, my music business.
All of our music businesses.
All of our music businesses in this episode, and the blind spots that you might be missing when you think about your music business, and in particular, the things that we look at when we talk to artists and bands about helping them with their marketing. I'm your host, Jack McCarthy. With me, as always, is your co-host, co-pilot, Circa. Cirque, what's going on, dude?
What's up?
How are you?
I'm doing all right, dude. Doing all right. It's a bit of an accounting day for me, and God, it's fun. Tell you what.
It's the best. Well, we're not going to be talking about that at all in this episode.
No, although that's probably one of your blind spots.
That might be the sixth blind spot, but we're not going to talk about that one today.
Yeah.
None of that. We'll keep that one off of the episode and hopefully keep this to some actionable things that you guys can be thinking about in your own music careers and in the careers of the artists that you might work with or hang out with. This kind of generated and spawned from an idea that Cirque and I were kicking around on bringing to the show some of the things that we look for in an artist or a band when we're talking to them about engaging with us at our agency, IndieX. We run a digital marketing agency. We've talked about it plenty on the show, but for those who might be new, we run a digital marketing agency where we work with artists and bands, creatives, on helping them grow and scale their music businesses from where they are with revenue right now to where they could be based on the opportunities that we see. And a lot of the work that we do with artists when we first start working with them is looking to dig into these blind spots that they might have in their music businesses, in particular their online music businesses. We help them to find out where are the areas of opportunity, what's going on in their marketing that could be patched up, shored up, structured a little bit differently, and battle tested and then scaled. And so that's what we're going to be talking about on this episode. I think it's going to be fun.
Hell yeah. Let's get it.
Super pumped. Well, one of the first things that we look at when we consult with an artist, whether that be at our agency or even in our music business coaching program, Indie Founder, we look to see how are you as an artist or a band or whatever your music project might be, a group, a solo project, we look to see how are you generating attention and how are you doing that consistently? And this comes in a lot of formats, but typically the linchpin to any kind of attention generation has to do with the content that you're creating and the frequency at which you're releasing it and promoting it.
Yeah, you know, it used to be the case that we could, and this is like as recently as even 2019, I would say, used to be the case that you didn't actually need, content wasn't as disposable. Like TikTok kind of changed all that, where content is very transient now. Like a lot of the video content that's uploaded online today is not intended to live for years. Whereas before TikTok, that was the case. It was like content was supposed to live for a long time. But now it's very disposable. And so it used to be the case that we could create, you know, a few pieces of high quality content, not too high quality, but high quality content. And then we could just run that with ads, run up an audience, and then start retargeting that audience. And retargeting has also changed. Now we're in this disposable content regime, and it's impacted every major platform where people discover artists and creators. And it's what the audience has come to expect. And so, yeah, like the audience is not necessarily out there expecting your content to be disposable. What they're expecting is a high frequency of content. And so are these platforms, right? Like we haven't actually gotten a good look at the inside, the bones of a social media algorithm since Facebook talked about EdgeRank back in the early 2010s. It was a very rare moment where Facebook came out at a conference and was like, here's how it all works. They could put it on the screen and everything. Platforms do not do that anymore. But we can reasonably assume that frequency and consistency plays a role in your longer term performance on these platforms. Ultimately, you got to think of TikTok as having this like bank account that's filled up with organic reach. They only have so much they can give out before the user experience starts to degrade. And so it's a scarce resource. Do they want to give organic reach? That means like a lot of eyeballs to someone who's going to consistently put content on the platform to keep users engaged on the platform? Or do they want to give tons of organic reach to someone who just uploaded like one video? You can assume, right, that the best business decision here would be to reward those who are consistently on the platform putting out content, because then they're going to give them the eyeballs and those eyeballs will stay on the platform to see that creator. And so that's why frequency of content, consistency of content is so important today.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is a helpful jumping off point because it definitely carries over into some of the other blind spots that we're going to be talking about. But in particular, when it comes to how you get new fans, the frequency at which you create content, the type of content that you're creating, and how that ties into the frequency of actual music releases that you're doing is, I think, paramount more than ever on how you actually gain a kind of like a snowball in terms of generating new awareness and new fans. And then ads play the kind of like the third wheel of the tricycle part of that equation, in my opinion and experience, especially right now.
Yeah, I would tend to agree.
So that's one of the big areas that we look at when we're first talking to an artist is like, if you are getting fans, how are you getting them? What are you doing? What's been happening in your music business? What has your release cycle been looking like? How are you creating content? How are you generating new ideas for content? What's the creation process look like? How often are you doing it? How often are you posting? And then how are you advertising and promoting it so that it, extends beyond the reach of what organic algorithms might do for you. And actually, Circa, it's funny, you mentioned about Facebook and EdgeRank. We did an episode probably about a year ago, maybe a little more. I'll link to it in the show notes about how the TikTok algorithm works. And it was based on a New York Times article that actually dug into some of the developer documentation on the TikTok algorithm. And it was really interesting. Now, granted, like that could very well be an outdated resource at this point, but it was interesting to get back into the nitty gritty of that because again, that had been like the first time since EdgeRank that you could kind of poke your nose around, especially when TikTok was going off at the time the way that it was.
Yeah. Another thing that's important, because I was reminded of it as you were just speaking on the matter, and it's important to note, I do live streams. For anyone who doesn't know, I come into our Indie Pro closed group 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I do a live stream Q&A for an hour at the end of the day, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so if you want to ask me your direct music marketing and music business questions, or even music legal questions or anything like that, join Indie Pro. You can go to indiepreneur.io/indiepro-join, or it's on the homepage, and you can join up to Indie Pro and then take part in those live streams. But something that's come up consistently as I've been coaching some of our newer members in those live streams through their early phases of their career path is I've been consistently harping on, okay, it's never been easier to get ideas for content because literally like these algorithms will surface for you all the shit that works. All you got to do is create a new account and then train it and seed it, and you'll get like literally your genre, your style, all the video types that work. They'll feed them to you as a user. And I've been telling them like, you have to do this. And then what I want to see, I literally did one yesterday on Monday where it was like, I was talking to this gentleman, Ledre, and I was like, Ledre, I want to know, how are we going to get 30 pieces of content to put out on social by November 1st? That's all I want to know. Like, I've been talking to him back and forth, but the constant pushback is that like, well, I've done pretty well with ads. Why can't I just use ads to run up my audience? And the main problem is that when you're using advertising to gain new eyeballs, the first stop for them, if they like what they see, is to go check out what you got on your, what we call your digital ecosystem, right? This is like all that, your web presence might be another way to describe it. They're going to go investigate. They might go to your website, but more likely they're going to go to your social page on the platform where the ad occurred. So if you're running Instagram ads, they're going to go to your Instagram profile. And what are they going to find, right?
Dude, yeah.
This is a bit of a trade-off because back in the day, if you were an artist who had put out multiple albums and you've had a bit of a length to your career, you stand out like a sore thumb because when people dive into your world, there's a rich world for them to dive into. And so now you don't really stand out as much because someone who might have been in, releasing and creating content for less than a year might have just as much content as that kind of artist would have had back in the day.
So true.
Because they're constantly producing it, constantly releasing it. But on the flip side, if they go to your page and there's like 7 posts, or there's like clearly not a frequency here, or the comment sections are a ghost town, it can stop the fan journey dead in its tracks. They can lose interest. And social proof really does a lot of the driving there. So that's why it's so important to populate your web presence with tons of content as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect transition into blind spot number 2, which is how are you keeping these fans around? And what's really interesting, I love that you made the point of if you're running ads, right, to get new fans and you're doing it alongside creating content and releasing and being consistent, then the cool thing about that is you've got blind spot number 1 and blind spot number 2 covered here. Or in our kind of lingo, you've got 2 stages of the buddy system sort of on lock as far as what your marketing is doing, which is great. That's exactly where you want to be.
Those 2 stages are introduction and education. I just went over this exact same thing on Monday with a few people. You can introduce yourself to the whole world, but if there's nothing for them to learn more about you, aka like a web presence, content for them to start diving through, if they can't binge, you're effed. You're screwed.
Yeah, I love the point that you made about it being beyond just them being able to binge on records. Now it is truly about your social assets on the internet, them being able to go and engage in that world. That is more important than ever now as social media has become more social than ever. I think that that's a really, really fantastic point and super, super important here because you can introduce yourself to thousands of people at scale and be spending lots of money to do it. But if the work on how you keep those people in your world and really suck them in and bring them to a place where they're going to be interested, if you can't do that, then you're kind of spinning your wheels or you're trying to fill a leaky bucket. I liken it to this, something that I've often told regular boring businesses is like if you're running ads for your restaurant, right? And let's say you're running I don't know. Let's compare it to an artist. Like let's say you're running a commercial for your restaurant just to allow people to know it's even in their town, right? They know that you've opened up a Circa's Taco Shack on the corner of whatever the busiest road in Orlando is. I don't know. And you're running a video ad about that. And it's got cool, some kid punk hip hop music. The first thing that people are going to do when they see that video, they're probably not going to go to your website. They're going to go to the social media page that you're advertising on and look at what other people like them are saying. They're going to look at the reviews. They're going to look at the comments. They're going to see what you're talking about. And if that doesn't exist, they're not going to trust that you're a legitimate business. They're not going to trust that you're reliable or that your product or service is good. And the same thing goes for your music.
Yeah, I'm going to drop a couple analogies here that should connect the point or drive it home for you guys is that, and we've used this analogy since Indepreneur started, but think of your whole music career or think of the music listening world as a party. It's a big party and you can go there. And if you go there, you're going out to the marketplace. Your goal is to walk away with as many friends who you can contact anytime and would do favors for you, close friends as possible. When you run ads, or if you get on a Spotify playlist, or if you get a blog PR campaign, right? Whatever. Like any form of exposure where you're introducing yourself to people who never heard of you before is akin to you being able to introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Circa. Nice to meet you. To everyone in that party. Ads are at scale. So it's like everyone at that party. And one of the reasons that we don't like playlists or blog PR so much is that you cannot then talk to them further. That's it. You just introduce and you got to hope that they come to you later and try to investigate, but you can't actually talk to them anymore after that. But with ads, you can. But the problem here is that once you're talking to them more and they're like, cool, so, what's your life like? What do you do? What are you interested in? And you're just like, lots of stuff, man. It's cool stuff. That's right. That's a dead end.
Yeah.
I'm talking to like a blank wall. There's nothing to investigate.
Talking to the most boring person at the party.
Do you think that if you say that to them, that you're going to walk away from that party as their friend? Probably not. That's not a great conversational tactic. That's what the education stage is. It's where we're providing them with entertainment, more information, familiarity. And so you not having a social presence and not having content on a consistent basis is akin to you just like giving that like flat answer to that question.
For sure. Yeah.
And then the other analogy is, man, we are so in the age of bingeable content. It's not even funny. So much so that if I discover a television show and I can't watch more episodes or even more seasons right now, the likelihood that I never revisit that television show again shoots up dramatically. Okay. Now, if I discover a show and I discover that I only watched one episode of 3 seasons that are available, I'm watching all of them in the next week. Okay. So it's like this inverse relationship where like, if there's more for me to go into, I will go into it faster and with more enthusiasm than ever before. If there's nothing for me to go into, if it's released on a weekly schedule, the chance that I'll never watch it again is way higher than it ever would have been. So that's the same thing. That's the same scenario. It's like, I discovered you, I dug your music a lot, but there's nothing for me to do here. There's no way for me to occupy myself while also becoming more familiar with you. And so the chances are that I'm going to move on with my life. And if you don't get back in front of me in a very compelling way, I'm gone. And the problem with that is that the second time I'm introduced to you, I'm basing that off of the first time.
Right.
The first impressions matter. So if I see you again, then in my mind, you're kind of something I've already seen and I don't have to investigate because I know.
And that's what's hard about kind of the stop and start that when we're talking with artists, sometimes we see is like they get fits and starts going of like trying to acquire fans and stay on top of keeping them, educating them, engaging with them. And the fits and starts of doing that can be really damaging because, like you said, if you have to reintroduce yourself to somebody and they in the back of their mind know, well, when I heard of this person before, it didn't really seem like they had it going on. Like there wasn't really a whole lot happening here. Like I heard a song that was cool, but that was kind of it. That is going to be the impression that sticks with them. And that's why consistency is so important. And going out into the market with a plan, I think, is especially important. I actually can't stress how important that stage is now more than ever. I feel like I've said that and it's probably sounding a little hyperbolic, but it's true. It will greatly increase the quality of fans that you're acquiring if you can be consistent in the way that you communicate with them online.
So much. Yeah. It makes everything easier. We have tons of case studies within the agency, our coaching program, and inside our training aspect of our business. And we have tons of artists that we've helped reach somewhere, like from somewhere else, right? Help them traverse a distance in their music career. But we don't have as many case studies where they started at ground zero and they got to like, holy shit, right?
The cold start is so hard.
We're often coming into artists who have already been doing it for a year or more, or they might be like established already, depending on where they encounter us. So it's rare for us to get someone from absolute zero, and then now they've been with us long enough for us to see them go to somewhere unimaginable. But one such quantity is Ed Isola of the 502s. And we watched that dude's career unfold, and it was miraculous. But it's a great example of this effect at play, because when Ed first started, he ran an album launch. And the benefit of it was that it was all one big plan. he's going to start putting out some singles from his album and release video content around that and run ads on it. And then like within a week, you're going to see him again asking you to join to get the album exclusive. Sign up for the email list. You're going to get the whole album plus additional content in this cool interactive experience long before we actually release the album. So the follow-up was there. It was in the plan. But he can't follow up with everyone, right? So it's like a way to replicate the sort of web presence, despite the fact that he didn't have one. But where he ended up, he did a workshop for us in 2021 that kind of detailed this whole journey. And he talked about how in October of 2020, marketing finally clicked for him. And it was related to this idea that he reached a point where he had, if you went searching the 502s, you were going to find positive reviews. You were going to find, pictures. You were going to find videos. You were going to find articles about them. So the web presence was there on Google. If you go to their socials, tons of content spanning albums, okay? And then if you go to their website, you can sign up for something. You can buy tons of awesome, like well-imagined products. So it's overwhelming what can happen once you discover the 502s. The second you discover them, whatever your next action is, Google search, social media platform, whatever it is, you're going to be met with tons of social proof, tons of rich imagery and content, tons of music, and everything's going to be overwhelmingly positive. So at that point, all that Ed has to do really is create new products and offers and then work on the front end, get more exposure, because every piece of exposure has a high likelihood of sticking. Anyone who discovers the 502s is incredibly likely to stick compared to where he started. And that's what that ecosystem does for you. It gets you to a point where you can just put all of your efforts into front end for the most part. You can't stop selling because like that's the revenue engine of your business, but you don't have to focus on creating so much infrastructure and all that. So that's why it's so important is that like once it's there, it's easy mode in a lot of ways. Like it's not because there's new problems to deal with, but all the things you used to worry about is on easy mode.
For sure, yeah. And you start to get in a flow, right? Like you start to find on your team who has strengths in certain content creation capacities, whether that be editing or ideating what the content is looking like or shooting great videos or taking great photos, or maybe there's some graphic design going on or writing copy. You start to find where your strengths and weaknesses are, and then you build upon them. And that makes it even more of an easy mode because then the snowball is rolling. It's picking up steam. People are getting better and better at what they do. It makes the work of it faster and seem less like work so that then you can focus more on the offer side of the back end and continuing to create great stuff for the front end, which is really your music and more of your video content, which we could probably go on a total separate rant about. But I'm glad that you brought up the point of landing on a website and signing up for something, sir, because that's a good kind of transition into the next spot that we look at. The things that we look at when we talk with artists are, all right, so you've got this social ecosystem online going on where people are discovering you and then they're falling into your world. How do you actually get the ability to contact them one-to-one is the next thing that we look for when we talk with artists and bands. Is how is that happening? Is that even happening is sometimes the big head scratcher for us. Like, is there a list of any kind being built up, whether that's an email list or a text list? That's something really important that we look towards. And it's often a blind spot that a lot of artists miss. And it's something that whether you're talking to an agency like ours, whether you're talking to a manager or a record label or any other kind of partnership that you might be thinking about in your music career, they might be asking this question too. I would hope that they would, because it's really important. It's where are you getting the ability to own your media, to own your audience? Because once you get somebody on a list, that list is yours. And the way that we do that, the way that we recommend artists do that is by building up free offers that they can make to their fans to get them to sign up. And those free offers sometimes can last a very, very long time. In the case of an album launch, for example, a free offer to get somebody onto your list that has to do with your record that you released, that could last a whole long album cycle if you've created something seriously compelling, value-packed, and exciting for a fan to experience. Some shorter term offers also are out there as well. Things like early access. If you're, putting out content at a seriously rapid clip and you're releasing music very, very frequently, some fans would kill or just sign up for your list just for the fact to be able to get, 24-hour early access. Those are the kinds of things you look at to see how are people getting onto a list and what can be used to build this up to make it a little bit better or get it in front of more people to scale it.
Yeah. Another big bottleneck that happens in our training community is that people will run like an ad or two and then try to go for opt-ins. They'll try to go for email subscribers. And I want to emphasize the point here because it can be a blind spot in both. It's a double-edged sword.
For sure.
It can be a blind spot in the case that you don't even know you should be collecting email subscribers and you have nothing in place for that in your ecosystem. And so you're not capitalizing on email. It can work in the other way in that you think that email is what's going to create your fan base or is it's a step on the road to having a fan base. And it's not really, because email is one of the types of owned media. Owned meaning you own it, just like Jack said. It's yours. You can take it anywhere you want. It's not specific to a platform. So you don't need permission to do anything with it. You can send them email. You can upload it to an ad platform and run ads against it. You can do whatever you want. And the email can contain anything you want. There's no rules about that outside of the email protocol itself.
Here's where the blind spot starts to come up.
Yeah. So it's your owned media, but the reason we have owned media is so that you can convert your paid and earned media into it. And if you don't have earned media, there's no point in you having owned media. So if you don't have earned media, is typically thought of as like someone wrote an article about you or you got interviewed and now it lives on a blog somewhere. And when people Google you, it's there. But another way you can think about earned media is your social media following. You don't own them. You're not paying for them. They're earned. You earned followers. And if you don't have a wealth of earned media, whether it went from paid media to earned, you ran some ads and they followed you, or, you just earned it through organic social, there's not a whole lot of media to convert into owned media, really.
Right.
So, people will often rush for like, I'm going to build an email list. And it's like, from who? Who's going to join it?
And for what?
Right. Yeah.
Which is kind of our next point too. With owned media, like you were saying, Cirque, owned media you're meant to do something with it. And I can't tell you how often I talk with artists, bands, managers, and their teams about what they're doing with the lists that they've built up. And it's a whole lot of nothing. And it's a huge blind spot because there's a lot of chatter out there, always has been, but still is to this day, a lot of chatter out there about the importance of building a list and the money's in the list. And I'm not here to say that's not the truth because it absolutely is. But so often lists are just left going cold to the point where you don't even really own it anymore because you've squandered it. It's just sitting there doing nothing. If you try to email it or text it, man, I talked to an artist recently who had like a 20,000 person text list and they hadn't texted it in 2.5 years. And it's just like, that's basically gone. Like those people, you're going to have to try very hard to reconvert that list back into actually caring to be communicating with you in a one-to-one channel. It's going to be very, very challenging. You're going to have to do a lot of work and it might not work. And so I say all that to kind of move on to the point of like the thing that we look to do with owned media in many cases, besides just keeping them further and more deeply engaged in your world, is we try to sell them stuff, whether that be e-commerce products online, whether that be tickets to your live shows, to your tour dates, whatever it might be, whether it be your new records, your releases, your merch, we try to monetize that owned media in a variety of different ways. And the way that you do that is by making offers. And this is how you take owned media and you convert it into customers. Oftentimes for the very first time is something that we're looking to see. How are people converting? How's an artist converting fans into first-time customers? And this is where you're kind of bridging the gap between a creative quote unquote business and an actual business.
Yeah. When Indiepreneur first started, in terms of my evolution as a marketer, I think that I was a bit more on the side of like, you have your email list and then you have your customer list and you have sales, and you can sell things to your email list, but you should be building your email list all the time. Whereas now, after working with lots of artists and actually seeing the full journey from like ground zero to like world tours, is like your email list is something you earn while you're creating sales typically. That's what it's best as, right? Like, an email list, like an email subscriber is a great thing to create if someone's not ready to make a purchase yet. An email subscriber who hasn't bought anything from you is a great thing to create if someone's not ready to make a purchase yet, and you need to give them more value before they're ready for something like that. But some of the most successful indies that we've worked with from the ground floor have accumulated a majority of their subscribers by selling. And so like, whether it be you are getting email subscribers so that you can deliver a one-of-a-kind experience like an album launch experience, or, you're getting email subscribers to send them through an automated sequence, which at the end of it, there's a sales offer. It's always on the way to sales.
Right.
And a lot of people will go out there and just decide, like, I'm just going to get opt-ins, even though I don't have a product to offer and I don't have a sale in mind. And that's a big waste of, I think, your audience's intent and attention. The reason they're coming in, if they're there for an album launch, right? There's a natural product to offer. They're interested in your album and they're invested in it. They're spending time. So sell them the album, right? If people are just signing up for like some nondescript reason, it's going to be hard to deliver them value because there's no lineage of interest. There's no like promotion ongoing. There's no narrative going on that they're actually interested in. They're just like broadly interested in your music and they want cool stuff. Cool. That's fine. But like, it's much better when we're focusing their interests on a narrative. It's leading to a sale. And then what's great about that is that like, if you create a customer, they're on your email list. All customers are for the most part. And you can then use that. You don't have to go back to square one where you're getting them off of social or you're getting them off of search. You can just go back to step 2, email. And it's much easier and it's much more fun that way. So it's a great checkpoint. It's like, I've always described it as like this in Sonic when you ran past the little red ball and it circles around. And now if you die again, you end up back there. That's the same principle. That's what email is. There are a few instances like The Hustle or like other email newsletters where their whole business was built around delivering value in a weekly format. If you're not built that way, if you don't have an intent of like, I have this badass like weekly content dump that I'm going to give to only my email subscribers, and it's like a plan that I'm executing, like that's great. But most people go into getting subscribers without that, right?
Yeah, it's true. Most of the newsletters that you see artists send are really not super value driven, to be totally blunt, honest, and a little brutal about it. And I think you're right, Cirque, in saying that like the most optimal way of collecting or building an email list or a text list is that every bribe you make can and probably should have a corresponding sales offer attached to it in the nearer term rather than the longer term. Because in my opinion, it's been rare for me to see an artist or a band be able to over deliver on value in one-to-one exchanges for a long enough period of time that, the long tail of just email list subscribers really becomes worth it. I'd love to be proven wrong about this, but like I've seen enough of it to, have a pretty strong opinion about it.
And it's different for artists than it is for regular businesses. Cause like if you're in a field that I'm an expert on and I'm delivering you value through education and like useful examples on a weekly basis in your email list, like I'm teaching you how to do something or I'm helping you lead a healthier lifestyle or whatever, then I might have a valid excuse for emailing you on a weekly basis, and I probably should.
Yeah.
Or multiple times weekly, because I can give you the value that you'll eventually pay for in the email list, and that makes sense. I can prove to you that I can help you by actually helping you first.
Right. That's different for artists.
Yeah, like it's way diff for artists. So I would say, like, unless you have a solid plan for like every month, like on a calendar, you have it mapped out. I'm going to drop this, I'm going to drop that, I'm going to drop this goes here, and you have a valid excuse for why you're emailing your list, then it's much better to think of your list as like, these guys get everything first before the public gets it. That's content, that's songs, that's everything. I'm going to carve away some of the stuff I create, whether it be videos or music, and I'm going to only ever give it to them. So you should have exclusives for your email list that like nobody ever gets, because what that does is, as you go, you're building a vault of things that the public has never seen. And that makes your front end offer for why they should join your email list more attractive every passing month.
Yeah, that's about the closest thing to the ongoing value that you could provide compared to like, that of a health business or something like that.
Yeah, I think one of the most compelling, like if you went to Bruno Mars's website and he was like, hey, just so you know, whether it be my group or my project with Anderson .Paak, I always take at least one, if not two songs out, and I don't release them. And the only way anyone's ever heard of them is if you join my email list. But I'll deliver them to you right now across the next 7 days if you sign up here. That's an incredibly compelling offer.
That'd be a dope bribe.
It's so curiosity driving. It's like, oh, what? There's music from this superstar that no one's ever heard, or there's music from my favorite band that no one's ever heard. That's amazing. So, that's a great strategy, and it doesn't require as heavy a lift as like weekly mailing on a newsletter basis. But that's all just to say, if you don't have an email strategy in place, you're missing out on, I'll say this, if you are getting gains in streaming and social, and you don't have an email list strategy in place, you need one. That's a huge blind spot, because there are tons of people ready to go a level deeper with you, and you don't own them. And if Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or YouTube decides that, guess what, we don't like your face anymore tomorrow, you're screwed. You're never going to get those people back. So you need it. On the flip side, if you aren't making gains in streaming and social, and you're not releasing content on a consistent basis, and you barely have any content to release in the first place, email's not going to change any of that. So like, you don't need an email strategy yet, probably.
Yeah, it's true. And you likely don't need an offer strategy, even from the standpoint of selling to those email list subscribers. You need a front end.
More and more, I'm convinced that probably the first thing you'll do is have an offer strategy before your email strategy.
That's a good point.
That's something that's changed for us in a big way. Like, we did not used to think like that. It was like, okay, you're doing well here, let's get you an email list. But now I'm more like, well, let's sell some stuff to them and get an email list as a bonus.
I think that kind of gets to the heart of what I was about to say too, is like, I think a lot of artists get stuck on the like, I'm going to build an email list and then I'm going to offer something. And then they spin their wheels trying to build an email list, don't really do it very well, then struggle to figure out what to offer, as opposed to going straight to figuring out what to offer, offering it as many places as you can, including email, even if you've got a few people on your list. And that's something that I want to mention here is like at the top of this blind spot of customer creation. How do you make first-time customers? A lot of times when I'm talking to artists, they have email list, text list that they have built up in some way, and they're not doing anything with it. If that's you, one of the things that I would encourage you to do is, rather than trying to figure out an email strategy, figure out an offer to make to those people and try to make some money off of that list. Show that there's some kind of value that you can derive from that list, rather than trying to nurture it back some, breathing entity. Just try to make some money off of it. See if you can reactivate it with a great offer rather than just, some content.
We're the agency for a Canadian hip hop artist, and he had how many followers when he joined us, Jack?
Oh man, probably about 800 or 900,000.
Yeah. What was his monthly listeners at? you know?
No, it's been a long time.
That's just suffice to say that if you're out there struggling to build your email list with ads retargeting your ecosystem, your followers and your engagement, and it's a grind. With that artist, we did an Instagram story. How many subscribers?
Like 20,000 subscribers in days.
Yeah. So like that should show you what a true reshuffling of earned media to owned media looks like, right? It's like we didn't have to do a lot of fancy stuff. Instagram story, compelling offer, 20,000 subscribers.
And this isn't uncommon either. It's not an edge case for that specific client of IndieX. That's often the case with artists that we work with that have large fan bases.
Yeah.
When you have volume of earned media and paid media, you have opportunity to grow owned media very quickly and at scale that would seem unfathomable in a lot of ways, very, very easily.
I would say that was us using owned media what it's for. We safeguarded that artist's future by making sure he always has his email list. We took it off of Instagram where it's very dicey and there's strict limitations on what he can do in terms of like what kinds of media he can post. And also on Instagram, he doesn't get the full benefit of his organic reach, right? He doesn't reach 900,000 followers when he posts. He reaches a percentage of that. With email, he's reaching every single one that signed up. So that's the differences. But you can see, like, for that artist, it was very necessary to get all of that work he's done on social and streaming over to something he owns. And that's an ideal case. Now, you don't have to have 900,000 followers, but you should be very visibly growing and you should have a strategy you're executing that is working for you there before you go to email, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. The next blind spot kind of addresses all of this. I would say it's probably like the kind of final cap on these 5 that we've discussed.
No cap.
No cap. For real, dude. And that's generating more revenue from the customers that you've created. So that's taking people who have bought from you once and getting them to buy from you again and again and again. And this is something that sometimes artists can do very well if they're consistent with a merch strategy, if they're creative when it comes to putting together offers, if they're releasing music regularly and putting that music into physical formats, CDs, vinyl, so on and so forth. If they're doing touring and they have merch from their tours that they can then sell online, these are all opportunities to continue to sell to your existing customers. And again, you do this through paid media, you do this through earned media, and you do this through owned media like lists. And what's really cool about this is as you grow, it gets easier and easier to do this. And something that I think a lot of artists are afraid to do. We talked about this on the episode where we were going through my email inbox. We'll link to that in the show notes. They're afraid to talk about it too much. And I'm here to say that you don't have to be afraid to talk about it too much. You can flaunt your sale a little bit more. People probably aren't going to get annoyed with you. Businesses are doing it all the time. My inbox is constantly flooded with sales promotions from companies that I like and I buy and I don't unsubscribe. And when I do unsubscribe, I end up resubscribing. And that's not unusual for customers. That's not unusual for fans of things. I wish that I could hammer that into the head of every artist and musician that I know because it's so important. But this is a blind spot that I think the consistency is sometimes lost in with artists and their teams. And so if you can focus in on that and start getting on a regular cadence of selling, this one kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah, totally. I want to dive deep into that. But first, I want to touch on, you had said like people are afraid to sell. People are afraid to annoy people. And like one heuristic you can use for that is like if you go into a crowded gymnasium, crowded, tons of people in there, everyone's talking amongst themselves. It's a buzz of conversations. You can't even hear any individual words. It's just like a big white noise. And then you shout out, "Hey, Dave." Okay. There's 3 things that can happen then. First, if your name's Dave, what do you think you do?
You're going to look.
Right. You're going to look. You're going to be like, "Oh, I'm Dave." You're going to turn around. You're going to stop your conversation with someone else. And you're going to see what's going on. What if your name's not Dave? 2 other things that can happen.
You either look because you're like, who the hell is yelling, "Hey, Dave," or you don't do anything.
Right. Chances are, if your name's not Dave, like you, and I ask you about it, like after you leave the gymnasium, do you remember when someone shouted out, "Hey, Dave"? You're not going to even remember.
No.
Now, if someone in that gymnasium turned around and said, "What the hell? I'm not Dave, dude. What's your problem?" Is that a reasonable person that you care about?
No.
No,
No.
you don't give a shit about that person because they're friggin' bonkers, right? And so Dave is the person who wants your offer. Not Dave, but didn't get pissed off, is everyone else. You're calling out to them. You're saying, do you want this offer? If they don't want it, they're going to move on with their lives. They're going to forget it ever happened. If they get pissed off, you don't care because that's a weird thing to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I said in one of our ads, like in the comments section, someone was like objecting to what we were offering. And I was like, well, if it isn't for you, it's not for you. If it's not for you, it's not meant for you. You're not the person we're going after. We're going after people for whom it is for.
If it's not for you, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah. And that comment got the most likes out of any of the replies in that entire thread, which is funny. So yeah, just say like, get over your fear by that heuristic.
I love that. That's a great analogy.
People will not care if it's not for them.
That's super good.
And then on top of that, in terms of, I want to delineate here because recently we got one of our, I think, it happens about once every quarter or maybe twice per year. We'll get a post in Indie Pro in the private mastermind where someone's like, hey, everyone, divulge your financial details to me about how your business is doing because I'm curious as to whether or not any of this works. And people will come out and say, here's what I'm making, here's what I netted last year. And it just happens pretty frequently. Someone new will be like, is there light at the end of the tunnel? Right.
Just a train. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. And it's a good sentiment analysis for myself to read through. And you'll see some people who are making, money from their career. You'll see some people who are breaking even and prioritizing growth over net income. And you'll see some people who have only ever paid money for their music career and never made any. And the big difference, even with people who are advanced and who feel like they're just reinvesting into the business for growth, is that they don't prioritize selling to existing customers. They don't know how many of their customers they have who have only bought one thing. They don't know how many of them have bought two things and why. They don't know how many have bought 3, 4, 5 things. They're not tracking that data and then emphasizing making sure that the amount of people who have bought one thing is as small as it possibly can be.
Yeah.
There's no systems in place to resell existing customers. It's not something they're focused on. They're focused on more customers, not more transactions per customer. And I would say after being in business for, over a decade now and learning from a lot of people who are very experienced in business, that the difference between a profitable business that makes net income after expenses and a business that barely makes a margin after everything's paid for is that one thing. It's reselling existing customers. You're a business that's great at creating customers, but you're not like that profitable. You can literally 20x your profit in a single calendar year by just spending that year focusing on reselling existing customers.
Yeah, it's so true. It's something like 7 times easier, I think, to resell an existing customer than it is to acquire a new one.
Or it costs 5 times less, or like there's different ways of spinning it. But it's like, yeah, because you're not paying an acquisition cost. This first time someone buys something from you, every piece of media, every ad, every, platform expense you paid to deliver an experience to them all gets wrapped into the cost of acquiring that customer. But once they become a customer, you don't incur those costs again. So the second transaction is literally the first one where you're likely to profit.
Yeah, it's true. And I think something that might be helpful here, similar to what I mentioned about if you have a list and you're sitting on it and you're not creating first-time customers, the thing you can do there is make them a sales offer and see what you can do just as an experiment, even as a first action. What you can do here, this was a great insight that you made, Cirque, and this is something that we do at IndieX, our digital marketing agency, all the time for our clients. Just take 2 hours out of your day to index your customer base and see how many people have bought from you once, how many people have bought from you twice, how many people have bought from you 5 times, how many people have bought from you 10 times, and then have a list of those people. Because if you've got a list of even 2 people that have bought from you 15 times, you could make a very, very specific, tailored offer to those 2 people for something that could potentially be life-changing to your business in 2 very personalized emails. And this is just an example of something very simple and kind of hand to hand that you can do to make this reselling of customers a very real thing. And that's whether you have a large customer base or a very small one. We see that kind of across the board, no matter how big your customer base or small it is. If you've got some first time customers and some repeat customers, there's some work to be done.
Yeah. Shay, one of our coaches, was working with one of our students. I think we told this story on the podcast with the posters.
That's one of our agency clients. Yeah.
Oh, okay. One of our agency clients. They had 2 posters left. And Shay was like, oh, we're going to offer them for $100 a poster, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Insane amount because they're limited edition and we're going to sign them. And they sent an email and they sold both of them. The point being is that there's 2 areas where you can focus on this to really drive major gains if you've got customers. One is 30 or 60-day value, which is like, how can I augment my system that is triggered by first purchase? So like, I need a system in place where it's activated by someone making their first purchase ever. And within 60 days, the goal of this whole system is to get a second purchase. Do you have that system? How is it working? You know, if you don't have it, you need to build it. If you have it and you don't know how it's working, you need to analyze that and you need to find out what the bottlenecks are. Because literally, like, if you're at that stage in your career where it's like, yeah, I have content and music coming out all the time. I've got email subscribers. I've got offers out there. I've even scaled some offers. I'm creating tons of customers. My business isn't profitable. Then literally the next thing that you should do is that 60-day value. You literally analyze what happens after someone purchases and what am I doing to resell them within 60 days. If you get a system there in place that works for you, your business will literally, like, let's say you're making 10% like net income at the end of everything. Your net margin is 10%. Well, if you take every customer in your business and you resell them within 60 days, then you could feasibly double the amount of revenue coming in. But that doesn't double your profit. That 10X's your profit.
Yeah.
Okay? It's because your 10% goes to 60%, but the actual notional value of that is 11 times what it was. And so, yeah, that's a huge difference, right? It's worth doing, clearly. And so another aspect of this that people miss out on is not just 60-day value, how am I going to get a second transaction, but what are they buying in that? Because if it's the same price as what they bought on the first transaction, that's a problem. Because they're already a customer. So they're more likely to buy something of a higher value. And when I say higher value, what I really mean is more significance and exclusivity to them, more personalization, something that represents, you know, like I remember an era of growing up when we were listening to bands that like the type of merch you had denoted your like level of involvement, right? You know, like he's got a jersey or he's got a hoodie or a rare hoodie, like God forbid, right? So that still exists within us. It's a psychological principle of humanity. And so if your 5th time a customer buys something, if it isn't like significantly, you know, higher value than the first thing they bought, that's a major area where you're leaking, you know, potential financial success. So these are the 2 things to focus on. 60-day value after purchase. How are you reselling them? What's the success rate? If you can get a 40% success rate on reselling existing customers within 60 days, you change your whole last life. And then sequencing of offers. Like if you make that list that Jack talked about and you have people who have bought 10 times, it's not what offer am I going to make to them tomorrow to get them to buy again? It is what unique offer that no one else is going to see am I going to make to them that has a 90% margin for me? You know, like that's where you should be thinking.
That's truly the biggest opportunity. And I'm glad you picked up on that, Cirque, and why I mentioned the 2 people that bought 15 times, because those are the customers that you can truly hone in on and say, what could I make so unique to them that would be so valuable to this person who has already bought 15 times, hopefully on an ascended, scale each and every time? What can I make to them that will really represent something game changer for them? And as a result, probably game changer for you from a monetary perspective.
Yeah. What can you sell for $1,000?
Yeah.
That's what those people would be interested in, probably.
And we've seen it done.
100%.
Memberships.
Yeah.
One-time offers.
Yeah.
Kind of all over the place.
Dave did a retreat, right? What was the sticker price on that?
Retreat tickets at that time, I think, were either $4.99 or $5.99, I think it was.
And how many customers you estimate he had at that time?
For that specific offer?
No, total.
The first time we did it, I want to say was 2019. Maybe a few hundred.
Yeah. Yeah. And his social wasn't like 900K, right?
No.
Yeah.
No.
But he sold out that retreat.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take crazy high volumes. It just takes attention, intention, and like actually caring about like, no, I'm not going to sell the people who bought 15 times another hoodie. I'm going to go on a retreat with them.
Right.
Literally.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's intentional offer creation. And sometimes it takes you beyond what you thought you were willing to offer.
Or could offer.
Yeah, or could offer. And then you charge accordingly. And this goes back to not being afraid to charge more money for your time and effort and energy.
Hell yeah.
Dude, I love this. I love this topic so much. I love these blind spots so much because I think what's interesting here and what I hope you guys took away from this is that no matter what stage of your music career you're in, whether you're just starting out, maybe with a new project, or you're just starting out releasing music and trying to get content going and get fans for the first time, there are lessons to be learned here. If you're a career-long artist or a band and you're trying to monetize in a way that actually makes sense and actually get active with it and try to start pulling profit, there are lessons to be learned here. These are the blind spots that we look at every single day in artist businesses. And it was really fun to bring them to you guys on the show. I hope that this kind of deep dive that lives oftentimes in the heads of Circa and myself and our team was valuable, and I hope you dug it.
Hell yeah. And if you did dig it, please just subscribe. Helps out the podcast a ton. Gets us out to more indie artists who need to hear this.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for listening. And as we're wrapping up the episode, this is The Reality of Yourself, and you're listening to Devil's Row. They're one of our Indie Awards winners. And if you want to join the ranks of our Indie Awards winners next year and possibly be nominated, make sure you join us inside of Indie Pro, our exclusive members community, where we talk about music marketing nerdiness all day long. We'll link to it in the show notes so that you can check it out on indiepreneur.io. Thanks so much. We'll catch you guys next time on Creative Juice. Peace. Dig out.